This is a demonstration video for the GeoSketch 3.0 beta release. This includes functionality for importing pictometry images. This import capability is an optional tool, so it's in a separate toolbar, just like the RPC tools. And in this beta release, there's just one icon in that toolbar for importing images from disk. In the final release, there will be an option for using Pictometry Online integration. Because our model is not geolocated, we have the option to geolocate on the first footprint that's read in, or to geolocate on the center of all footprints, or to just geolocate manually by keying in a latitude and longitude. If your model is already geolocated, then this panel will not be presented. And the next panel is for importing the shapefile. In this case, the shapefiles are stored in a separate directory from the images, but it may be the case that they're stored in the same directory. And here we have 4 separate shapefiles for the oblique, the ortho images, and the sector images, and other images. We can either load in a single shapefile, or we can choose to load in all of the shapefiles. If you're loading in all, then it doesn't matter which one that you pick. GeoSketch reads in the projection.txt file that was in that shapefile directory and reads the geographic information that's contained in it. If for some reason you don't have a projection.txt file, then you can use the settings of this panel to set your geographic datum. In this case, we do have a projection.txt file, so we'll just take the defaults. And here's where we have the option to load in either a single shapefile or all 4 of the shapefiles that GeoSketch found. And we can specify relative to the shapefile directory where the images are. And this is because sometimes the directory information in the shapefile does not reflect where the images actually are stored on disk. So you can specify that using this drop-down menu. Take the default on that, and it's loading in those 4 shapefiles and telling us the name of them as it loads them in, and that it found a total of 8,539 images in those shapefiles. And now we're presented with a filter option for filtering the footprints, and we're filtering the ortho images, and we're going to display images that contain the cursor in the footprint. So since we chose the option to center or geolocate on the first image, our origin of our SketchUp model was where the first image is located. Now when you're not sure of the coverage of your shapefiles, there's an option of hitting the Tab key, and now we can specify that we want to read in all of the footprints of a certain type. I can change to sector. When I first click OK, it tells me that there are 24 sector images, and I can read in those footprints to get an idea of the coverage of my imagery. And for sector images, since they're at a lower resolution than the oblique and ortho images, we can go ahead and load those in. So now I change my filter, set to sector and cursor and footprint, and I can just select each one of these footprints, and each time I select one, that sector image is loaded in, and if there's a relatively small amount of them, you will be able to fit all of them in your SketchUp model. And then they're basically, I'm loading in all the different rows of these sector images, and there's actually 2 contiguous areas of coverage, so I can zoom out to the other one and load in those as well. And then I will probably want to save this image so that I can use it for reference as I model different areas of the coverage area. So we can again change our filter. Instead of showing sector footprints, we'll go back to showing ortho footprints, and we'll change the option to show cursor at center, so it'll show whichever footprint is closest to being centered on the cursor. And we'll go to the area of these images that we want to model and use the left mouse to load that image. So now we've got an ortho image, and we still have all our sector images. It's always a good idea in SketchUp to model close to the origin. So there's an option we can select on that ortho image that we just selected and open it in a new model, and in this case it will be centered at the origin. So typically you would want to save that sector model, but I've already saved it, so I don't need to save it again. And now I've got that image located at the origin of SketchUp. So now that I've got my ortho image that I want to model with, I can proceed to load in oblique images. And here's an important point about reading in the pictometry images. Because I changed the geolocation of my model, it does not match the data that's currently read into the SketchUp session, so I need to load in that information again. if I hadn't changed my geographic location, I could continue to read images from that previous load of the data. In this case, I'll just load in the oblique shapefile since I'm only interested in oblique images, and I'll choose the option to just load in the single shapefile. So now my cursor, I'll change my filtering to start out by loading oblique north images, and I'll choose the option to just show the one that's closest to being centered on the cursor. And I'll go to my ortho area and choose the one that has the best coverage. And then when I left mouse click, it loads in that image as a GeoSketch aux view. Then I'll change my filter to south and find the image that gives me the best coverage of all the south facing images, that one. And then I repeat that for east and west. Change my filter to look at the east facing images and select the one that gives me the coverage that I need. And then finally for the west, this option of filtering and showing the footprints gives the user more control of the footprints that are loaded for a given coverage area. For example, if you knew that you were only going to model in a certain area of your ortho image, you might want to choose an image that had better coverage for that area. So now we have our 4 oblique images, north, south, east, and west, and our ortho image, and we can choose to start modeling now. And if there's any inaccuracy in the camera models, we can use the enhanced texture face tool, which has new features in it for GeoSketch 3.0 to correct those errors. If we're going to be building a lot of models, then we would probably want to use the new bundle adjustment feature so that we can adjust the camera models for these oblique images so that they match each other and always project to the same location in the modeling space. And each of those functions will be demonstrated in a separate video.